This is the Drive and Dish Podcast.
There's the Drive and Dish.
Click. Welcome to your Kodak moment, my friend.
To start it off, it's Kevin Rayfuse and Justin Kuzart. Let's go. Bingo! 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, mic check.
Last, essentially, few weeks of the season topics to get into. I mean, we'll take a look at schedules and where everything lands. We got to get into Indy and their coaching situation and the problems that surround Indy right now. And then that'll also lead us to talk about the Hawks a bit because, well, you know, we got to get into Nate a tad as well. So I think all those will be fun to talk about today. But I got to bring up, as a warm-up jumper, two of my worlds colliding again. I think this happened last year, right, as the NBA playoffs were starting, if I'm not mistaken. But a video game is getting a basketball twist yet again. Now, I don't necessarily play Fortnite anymore. But what is going on is Fortnite is adding LeBron James and Zion into the game. So, like, they'll be playable characters. And then on top of that, they're adding a basketball, like, mini game on the side. And from the looks of it, from the photos that I've seen, it kind of looks a lot almost like NBA Jams in a way, just with like the Fortnite cartoon style, which almost makes me want to try it just to see if it's anything like that. You know, like if it's NBA Jams, you know, I'm going to be like, we need to keep this game mode and we need to play this from now on. Like, I don't need you taking this away once the playoff starts or your week or 2 week run with LeBron and Zion is over.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely a great idea. And obviously, I mean, I feel like anyone who listens knows my Fortnite story. I was way too behind the curve. So by the time I downloaded it, there's no real training mode. It's not like with Call of Duty Warzone where I had played COD so much in the past that there wasn't really too much of a learning curve for me there. I already knew how to play it. And so because of that, I didn't super get into it. But I mean, I saw that how we talked, I think, last week about the battle with them and with Apple. And I saw their court filings. They grossed like $9 billion last year. So clearly they're doing something right. If you can afford the rights for LeBron and Zion Williamson, you're, of course, bringing it in as well. I mean, look, anything that prolongs the game, anything that gets people back into it. I mean, Fortnite's had a run now for what? It's been going on. I mean, are they at 5 years? Yeah, you know this better than me.
I would say, from my knowledge, I think it's 2, maybe 3
it's at least
years.
3.
Yeah, okay, so then maybe 4 years, because I was kind of late to getting to it as well. But like to this, they added, and you'll be able to speak to this more than me. They added Neymar into the game not too long ago, so they're kind of just going stars from each game. Now with the LeBron one, I wasn't necessarily sure if I wasn't sure if they were adding him because of basketball or if it was like a Space Jam thing, you know, because I could see
probably both, honestly.
I could see Fortnite going full on like Space Jam where like, you know, add LeBron, but then also add like Bugs Bunny or Lola. And, you know, like I could see them adding that. Obviously, you got to get the right people's approval and stuff like that. But that seems like an easy fit. But then Zion was on there and they added the basketball mode. So I figured it was more NBA than Space Jam. But that is also something that's on the horizon. So maybe it goes there too. I know they're you know, this kind of off topic, but I know they're in talks with The Rock, and they're talking about adding the Rock into the game. So, you know, I think they're just adding whoever and whatever they think can fit and go in this thing. So
yeah, anything that could be a attachment that people can buy, a skin, a content, whatever it may be. That I know they're definitely going to try to take advantage of that. I hope it's like NBA Jam. I mean, that would be sweet. I mean, NBA Jam is I don't think it's my favorite NBA game ever. I think NBA Street 2 probably will hold that for me in terms of sheer amount that I played it and just pure fun. And if you could just pick it up today and play with anybody. But I mean, yeah, that and NBA Jam, you could just, like the Super Nintendo version, you can kill hours just playing that game and just talk infinite amounts of trash the whole time. I've seen people get really, really hype over that game, put it that way, like myself included. Like you get into it sometimes. It's fun. It's a classic arcade game. So it's that type of style. So well, and there's been many spin-offs, you know, like I love NBA Street. So even if it's like NBA Street, which is again sort of similar to NBA Jams in a way. NBA Street's a classic.
Yeah, I mean, but I even liked it back when they were like at NBA Street 3 and we're working on trying to add things to the game. Like they added like the Mario characters, and even that was was weird, but like I liked it. I was like, this is cool, because when you look at the Mario games, you had Mario Baseball, Mario Soccer, and all those games were so much fun. Mario Tennis, Mario Golf, like that. But you didn't have like a specific basketball one. I wish they would make a specific basketball one. I think that could be hella fun, especially if it is like an NBA Street style, and you just have Donkey Kong down in the paint, freaking rejecting anybody that comes down there. So
I'm just imagining Biggs from the first game, because Biggs was the big British dude from the big black British dude from London, I think.
Yeah.
He was the first level that you played when you played the NBA Street, because you would play Canada, you would play, which is so it was crazy. You played Vancouver at the time, and then you played Toronto, and then you'd have to play him. And I'm just picturing like him and Magma Man backing down in the paint right now, and it's just crazy. Or throwing Donkey Kong and Magma Man out there together, something like that. Get Bowser in the paint. It's just I'm trying
to see if I can find them real quick.
The Nintendo version always had it. Like I know, like I played when I played NBA Street, I was playing on PlayStation 2, but I think the Nintendo versions might have had it, or if anybody would have, obviously that would have made sense. Nintendo's not going to license those rights out to anybody else.
Is this hold on, sorry, I'm trying to pull it. I think this is big. If I can get it to pull up real quick. I don't know if it's gonna happen. Is this him? That him? Oh, that's kind of small.
Yup, that's big. Yes. Oh yeah. He was great, dude. You'd pick him up right away, you'd get him in 3 games, and you just have that center position on lock every single time.
You were set, and goaltending wasn't even a thing.
No.
So that was
right on the rim, and you turbo block it.
Mm-hmm. Ain't nobody scoring down low. So yeah, there he is. Okay, I remember him kind of.
No, that's a classic. The first and the second one are the best for me. I played the third one a little bit, and obviously they never made a fourth, which is kind of tragic. But if they remastered the first two, like, oh man, they would just take my money so fast.
Yeah, I agree, and maybe they, maybe it gets to a point. I wonder, because like Xbox and them are kind of bringing back older games and putting them on Game Pass and stuff like that, like PlayStation doing the same stuff with their equivalent. So I wonder if there is a point where they get to that and bring back those old games, because man, I mean, I know this is basketball podcast, those were awesome. I'd love for like a Slugfest to come back, but NFL Blitz, all of them would be so fun to bring back. Honestly, even newer versions of it, but who knows where those things are. They did, by the way, Kevin, I know it was a PlayStation game, but they did just bring MLB The Show to Xbox, and I've been playing that.
Yeah.
And
I saw that. Yeah.
That's been fun. And dude, I mean, baseball's got a whole bunch of rules and all that stuff, and different ways to play the game. So like the way you can customize that game is insane. Like every facet of the game, you can play like casual, which is just like press a button and do your thing. Like, so for hitting, right, you can play casual, which is what I do because I'm horrible at the game. A is just a contact swing, B is like bunt, and X is like power swing, right? Mm-hmm. And then like the next step up would be, I think it's like simulation or something, and then it's like, well, you have to pick the direction you want to try to hit the ball, and then you're also trying to guess what pitch they're sending your way, and if you guess it correctly, that like helps you in terms of hitting it. And then there's a whole nother one, which is where you have to like aim in the strike zone of where you want to hit it, where you think they're pitching it to. It's like, ooh, it gets involved.
Yeah, it's mad realistic. That's the one thing I've heard from everybody, is that like the show is like, it's hard. It can be, it looks like real baseball at some point. You get, we start having to factor in all the things that these guys do in real life. I mean, baseball is, not to get too off topic, but baseball is the hardest sport by far, like to play professionally. I mean, you have the best guys professionally who are hitting like 310 a year. If they hit 310 a year, that's an all-star season. That's absolutely incredible. And they're going 31% of the time they're coming up and getting hits. Like, I mean, imagine if the best NBA shooters were shooting 31% or something like that.
Hey, if they're doing that from 3, we're like, ooh, that's disappointing. We're mad about it.
Let alone for the paint. Like, imagine if somebody like a center or something like that, somebody like a Rudy Gobert.
Oh, it'd be done. You're done. You're done. Get him out of there.
31%. It's like, that wasn't even possible, honestly.
Yeah. Then at that point, it's like, dude, something's wrong with him. He's got broken something, or he's hurt, or he's playing injured. Like, yeah, the excuses would start coming up, or the questions would start coming up, for sure.
Yeah, they'd be piling up real quick.
I agree.
All right, so what we got next on warm-up jumpers?
Oh, that's it for this one. We're saving.
one. Oh, okay. We're saving for the episode. All right. In that case, everybody, hey, welcome to the Drive and Dish NBA podcast. My name is Kevin Rafuse. Joining me as always, my co-host Justin Kuzart.
I feel CP3 should be MVP. He's doing everything Steve Nash did to win it over Kobe, reward winning, and the Suns haven't been number one since Nash won MVP.
Yeah, I know that I've seen that this is the take on television this week. And this is not, I'm not trying to remotely disrespect Chris Paul. The Suns are incredible. Chris Paul deserves all the credit in the world. He's one of the best players of all time. But no is the answer to the question.
Well, first of all, the other part of that is right now, as of recording, the Suns, no dig at the Suns, they are not number one. They're a game back. Are they? Yeah, game back. Game back. Yeah, so, they're not number one. But I did get interested to see Chris Paul's numbers compared to...
Oh, wait, who tweeted this, by the way?
Oh, yeah, Swaggy P. He's trying to go for, what was it, Paul Pierce's old ESPN gig. He's trying to gun for that now, so he's getting all hot takey.
I give that 2 weeks.
He tweeted about it, though. He said, ESPN, I heard you're looking to fill a position. I got you if you're interested.
Yeah.
ESPN was like, yeah, nope.
I think somebody would pick him up. Like, don't get me wrong. He made there's potentially a media future for sure. I just don't think it's ESPN.
No, I think if Swaggy P is going to do something, he's got to buckle down and learn how to do it in the industry, but then do something similar to, oh my gosh, why can't I think of his name? He's on YouTube. He was with ESPN. Why can't I think of his name right now? Has Aaron Rodgers on all the time.
Oh, Pat McAfee.
Pat McAfee. Oh my God, why couldn't I remember his name? I think Swaggy would be best suited for like a Pat McAfee type unfiltered show, can say whatever he wants to say, do whatever he wants to do kind of thing, like almost like a podcast, but like YouTube live show like Pat McAfee will do. So I think that would be better suited for Swaggy P because then he can let his personality come through a little bit more and kind of joke around, and not necessarily be filtered like you'd have to be a little bit on actual TV because, the FCC is going to have something to say about it.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with that, though. I think that was the type of role that he should take and, let his humor, let his personality stand out and shine. Like, I just don't think ESPN is more serious. It's more formal. It's more obviously there's opportunities to be funny there and you want to have personality. I'm not saying that everybody at ESPN is a stiff, but I think Swaggy P is just in a different type of dynamic, but there still could be a media future there, like you said, in that Pat McAfee type role.
Yeah.
And Nikola Jokic is the MVP, by the way. Can we just put, I know we're going to talk about this a little bit later when we talk about what to expect for the rest of the season, because we only basically have a little over a week left at this point, but Jokic is the MVP. I just don't know why this is so difficult for everyone to, and I get that shows got to talk about certain things, and I get that the MVP is a narrative-based award, but Nikola Jokic is the MVP. Joel Embiid is second. And then at that point, you can debate your third pick. I probably would have Steph third, I think. I think Giannis has got to be in the conversation as well. I mean, I know he's won it 2 times and there's voter fatigue there, but look at the way the Bucks have been climbing recently. They're still not totally out of it for the race in the 1 seed in the East. So, but I think Jokic is going to rightfully win the award. He deserves it.
Yeah, I just wonder if there's any argument. I know, and again, I'm bringing it up from a homer bias, obviously, with Joel Embiid, but, Embiid's been balling out since coming back from injury. I mean, in those 16 games, playing about 30 minutes a game, almost averaging 29 points, block and a half, almost 10 rebounds. We'll round them up. It's like 9.8, and so I get it. The injury stuff comes into play, and that's where everyone's like, look, Jokic has the health factor. He didn't miss that many games, and the Nuggets themselves didn't drop after losing, arguably their second best player, and a lot of that definitely lands on Jokic being able to continue that winning. And, I don't necessarily, the way it is, maybe they end up in the 3rd seed. Them and the Clippers are kind of a game away from each other, but they're either going to be the 3rd seed or the 4th seed going into the playoffs. And I wonder if they are the 4th seed, though it would only be by like a game, would there be an argument to say, well, Joel Embiid is the best player on the best team in the East, and does that kind of, give him a one-up? I don't think so, because again, you look at the records, the Sixers have 46 wins. That's only, two more than the Nuggets as of right now, and that could be even or even closer by the end of the season.
Yeah, no, and I understand, and that is the core of the argument, essentially, for Joel, is that he's been the best player on the best regular season team. Now, I don't really, the thing is, like, the Sixers have won 46 games as of recording this podcast. The Nuggets have won 44. So it's not like really the winning is that drastically different. Like, Denver would be competing in the Eastern Conference as well. Jokic now doing it without Jamal Murray, which, again, is a recent development, but still, the numbers have been there the whole season. And it does come down to that for me. Like, I would love for Joel to win this award, but Joel's missed, 19 games this season? Jokic has barely missed any. If you look at the advanced numbers, too, I just think this is a historically great offensive season for Jokic, especially out of that big man position, but he's just leading a lot of he's just leading a lot of main categories. I can say the word, I promise. Like, he's leading the league in PER right now. He's leading the league in win shares, offensive win shares per 48. His offensive box plus minus is the best in the league. His overall box plus minus is the best in the league. His VORP is the best in the league. Like, Embiid has been absolutely incredible. And I think if Embiid had played all the games, this might be a different story, because I think Embiid at his peak has absolutely played as well as Jokic has. And I think Embiid is a better defender than Jokic is. I feel like Embiid is arguably playing the best two-way basketball in the NBA right now, but like, Jokic's offensive game is special. It's not like he's a total stiff on defense or something like that, where just because Embiid is a historically great defender doesn't mean Jokic is some, sieve on the other end like that. And I just think when you've done it the whole season, it's hard for me to pick against him. Like, he just is checking too many boxes. I think it's an easy decision for the voters here. And I think a lot of people have gotten weirdly, like, I don't know. There's just been a lot of weird discounting, and I understand that part of it is the job, and I understand that part of it is just we focus on different teams every single week, and maybe we're not focusing on Denver as much because they were playing their best basketball, and then when Jamal gets hurt, I think most people, even though they have stayed afloat and they're going to be a 3 or 4 seed in this loaded Western Conference, I still just don't think people have them as a potential title contender now, where before, and that's what stinks. If Jamal Murray's healthy, they might win the whole thing.
Well, and to that point, no dig at the Nuggets, I feel like, at least in the West, there's probably 3 storylines of the West right now that people are focusing on that are more intriguing than the Nuggets and their play right now. And that is the Jazz and the Suns being as good as they are, and are they legit? And then you've got the Lakers, who are probably going to have to play in a play-in tournament, which, by the way, we called LeBron James being upset. We knew it was coming. We knew for a fact it was coming, which we'll get into this.
Funny. Everybody loves the playing game, so you got to be in the playing game.
Except for Curry, who when he said he liked it, they were in 9th place, because of course they were. But it's going to create a funny situation there at the 7, 8, 9, and 10 spot. Like, you look at it, like the Lakers just lost to the Trailblazers, so now the Trailblazers have the tiebreaker over the Lakers. So they, like, in my mind, almost have it locked. And then you've got the Warriors, who are only 1 game ahead of the Grizzlies. I think it would almost be better for the Warriors to lose and be in that 9th spot, so that they don't have to play the Lakers in the play-in tournament and can at least avoid them and finagle their way around a little bit.
Oh, but if you win that first game against the Lakers, though, you can lock in at 7 and just chill out. You don't even have to worry about playing the other game then at that point. It's like, play as little games as possible. There's not the chance you could you could throw that game, but then you potentially get eliminated. Like, that's the thing. Yeah. When you play that 9 game, you mess around and lose that 9 game, and all of a sudden then you're out of the playoffs in general.
Yeah, I know, but it's the would you rather go up against the Lakers, who are the defending champs, or potentially, and no dig at them, the Grizzlies or the Spurs,
I'd much rather play the Grizzlies or the Spurs, but if I'm locked in at 8, I'm gonna have to play the Lakers anyway, and I don't have anything to lose. Like, my worst case scenario is I lose that game to the Lakers, and I just am playing another game for my season. Like, it's not ideal, but if I'm coming in at 9, I'm doing that anyway. So
That's fair.
anyway, shout out to Nick Young for that tweet. And again, there's been a lot of discussion about the MVP tweet. Obviously, many rabbit holes you can go down. We'll talk a little bit about that later. We'll talk a little more about the seeding as well as we get into what to expect for the end of the season. Again, like Justin said at the beginning of the podcast, we're going to talk all the Nate Bjorkgren drama in Indy and how he may be out after one season, who's balling, who's fallen as well. So we'll take a look at the good and bad throughout the NBA. Leave us a review on iTunes, good or bad. We'll read them on the podcast. If you are not an Apple user, Stitcher, Google Play Store, Amazon Music, Spreaker, Player FM, TuneIn, anywhere that you can find a podcast, you can find us.
Yes, and shout out to the 7 subscribers so far on the Drive and Dish NBA podcast. Would like to point out there was 8 yesterday, so we lost somebody.
Wow.
Because I had this whole Elite 8 thing ready to go, and I just checked. We're down to 7. Someone probably got mad at us, or maybe it's not enough content. I don't know. Maybe that's a conversation for us to have another day. But we do appreciate you guys following us there. If you want to follow along and watch the video version of the podcasts, you can go there too. It doesn't have all the cool, funky production elements that our podcast does with the intro and all that stuff because I don't want to put in the work to make that happen, if we're going to be completely honest. So if you want to see it with or hear it with all that stuff, podcast, if you want to watch it so that there's a video element, put us on your TV and take a photo and send it to us on social media. Then you find us on YouTube, just search Drive and Dish NBA podcast and you'll find us there.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's the thing. The video just it's not like it's live. Like if I like back in the day, when we weren't doing the live video, we would have the video element of it, but like if we messed up, we would stop and start sometimes and like pick back up. We're like, this, you're rolling for better or for worse. And so if we're a little choppy once in a while,
well,
just,
and like there's a good chance I mess up Nate's last name in here in a few moments. So we're gonna give it a go and see how to do it.
I got you. Don't worry.
Bjorkgren, but it doesn't flow off the mouth that easily. So I'm sure I'm going to mess it up at some point.
Have it. No,
I know.
You got it.
I know. But it's like you're mid talk, you're going, and then you just got to drop a Nate Bjorkgren. Like it doesn't feel right in your throat. No offense to his last name, it just feels weird to say. So I'm sure I'll mess it up.
Either way, well, if the way things are going right now in Indy, may not have to say it too much longer. I'll put it that way.
The Drive and Dish NBA can now be played hands-free. Just say to your Amazon Echo, play podcast, The Drive and Dish NBA, and you can hear all our episodes. Well, let's jump right into it with the Indy and Nate Bjorkgren stuff. So his future as the Pacers head coach in question. Woj tweets out just a few days ago, amid a year of difficulties with players and staff, Indiana Pacers coach Nate Bjorkgren future with the franchise is uncertain as regular seasons near an end. That's according to sources that are telling ESPN. The Pacers at that point were 30-34 and 9th place in the Eastern Conference, and currently are still in 9th place at 31-35, so just a few games. Then Woj did go on to follow that tweet up, saying that Bjorkgren has work to do in the relationship with key players in his locker room. Apparently, since the tweet had gone out, there had been some willingness within the organization to address those issues and trying to fix it. So, Shams then follows that up with Brogdon and Sabonis are two of the players that aren't necessarily happy with Bjorkgren's style of coaching. More specifically, he implemented an analytics style of coaching. Apparently, the players don't like that, which seems to be a very common thing. When you go analytics, you take the human element out of it. That can create some problems because feelings and how players feel about the coach and where their standings are don't necessarily show up when you take an analytical approach. So here we are. There's been a lot of injuries. I mean, TJ Warren's been out for, if I'm not mistaken, the whole season. If not the very beginning of the season when he got injured. Miles Turner has been out. There was a lot of change. Obviously, this is Bjorkgren's first time coaching the Pacers. Should he have a little bit more of a leash than 1 year that essentially is during a pandemic?
I want to say yes, but I'm also like, if you've lost Brogdon and you've lost Sabonis, who are clearly your most important guys going forward. And I mean, there's a report out that if you believe it, that TJ Warren asked for a trade as soon as they hired him. It's hard for me. I don't want to, when it's just one report, but I mean, the Pacers, I think, have pretty underwhelmed this year. I mean, the Pacers are 9th in the East right now. They're a half game up on Washington, who, oh, by the way, is playing a lot better. Like, I think we all expect Washington to jump Indy. I think there's definitely been some disappointment there. Now, again, there have been some changes made, obviously, with Oladipo getting traded and bringing Karis LeVert, then having the up and down with him. Thankfully, he's okay now, but you don't have those guys playing well in your locker room, because there is a lot of talent there. I don't know. It's a weird situation, but I think it all goes back to something that we'll talk about a little bit later. Is I don't know why they fired Nate McMillan.
Well, and to that, from reading a little bit about SB Nation's Pacers page, taking a deeper dive, there was some belief that those same players that are complaining about Nate now were complaining about the last head coach. And if that's the case, it's like, okay, well, then you guys, is this a player thing and you guys just not happy in general? Or is this a specific way they're coaching you that you're upset with? Because if it is that, and they were upset with McMillan, if it was Brogdon and Sabonis, just to point out the two that Shams tweeted about, upset about both, it's like, okay, well, at some point it's like, yo, we tried to change it for you guys and you're still not happy, so it's something else. Like you're projecting this upsetness, which might just be the team's performance, onto the coach, which happens a lot, and rightfully so in some cases.
Yeah, and I mean, he's had some defense recently. Like, so Bjorkgren was in Toronto before this, and Nick Nurse came out and just said, yo, he's not difficult to work with. Like, that's a bald-faced lie. Well, there have been reports within the organization that he hasn't done well with his assistants either, and I think that's a concerning point.
And to that, a lot of these times, and this is why I wanted to bring up that second part that Woj brought up, was the willingness that he put out. He said that there's, excuse me. He said that there's some willingness on Bjorkgren's side to fix the problems within the organization. I'll be honest, in the past, every time we hear about coaches and there being problems in the locker room, I don't think I've ever seen Woj follow it up with he's working on it or has shown the ability or the willingness to try to work on it. I think that's a big part of this that may have been strategic in Woj putting that out, just saying like, yo, this is a problem. There is a problem. It got brought up, but they're working on it. Like imagine if Schefter puts out the tweet about Aaron Rodgers, like, hey, Aaron Rodgers demanded a trade, and then follows it up with, the Green Bay Packers understand what was going on and they're working on repairing the relationship. We're at least talking about that, because, now we're talking about, we're putting Aaron Rodgers on freaking Miami and the Washington football team and all these other teams in San Francisco, so I think there's something to be said for the fact that was followed up with that information, because, a lot of the times too is you got to look at who potentially leaked the information to Woj and Shams, like who does it benefit for this information being out, right?
Mm-hmm. Well,
so I think
go ahead.
So I think that's a big part to look into it. Like if the players want change, which is what it seems like, it's probably safe to assume the people that leaked this information may have been agents of players that want change, And so with the Woj follow-up, that could have been Nate's side of things, or the front office of the Pacers going, hey, we got to get ahead of this. We knew about this. We're working on it. We're trying to fix it right now,
I think at the minimum, we may or what I can take away from this is that maybe if Nate Bjorkgren is overwhelmed, and they want to keep working and moving forward with him and not decide to just totally fire him right away, is that you just got to change the assistants at the minimum. I mean, this season started pretty well for Indy. That's what's crazy, is like everything started well. It's just kind of imploded recently. I mean, they're 31-35 as of recording this podcast, which I definitely think is disappointing given the expectations that they had going into the season, expected to at least be higher into the playoff mix. There were reports in the Indy Star about the organization being worried about him as a person and just not being able to handle the head coaching job. I think that's a little more interesting, but that kind of goes to my points. Then this is a first time NBA head coach. It's not an easy job. Surround him with strong assistants, like get guys who have been around the block a little bit, who have that more veteran the way you have a veteran presence in the locker room, you have a veteran coach on the staff that can help out a little bit, and maybe it goes a little bit better. Or maybe the Pacers just decide to rip it off at the end of the year and go, look, we made a mistake. I mean, that is the one thing. Sometimes organizations do make mistakes. It's better to cop to it faster and just rip the Band-Aid off and move on and try to fix it than make a bad situation apparently all worse as this goes on into next year.
I agree. You don't want to, if it is a serious problem, then you got to rip the Band-Aid off and go from there and try to fix the problem you created. Situation. But I guess the problem is are we at a point where if Nate is let go, if he's let go, then does that kind of confirm that they were wrong, which we all kind of said already, to let Nate McMillan go?
I mean, yeah, but to me, at that point, that decision's already been made, and I don't fault them anymore for admitting they're wrong and just saying, hey, we made a mistake. Like, that's the end of the world. Like, you can't change that now. Unfortunately, they can just Nate McMillan's off the market. He got hired, he's coaching in Atlanta, and he's probably going to have that
probably going to land himself the head starting job over there, yeah.
I mean, he sure as hell earned that this year, the way the season's going down there after Lloyd Pierce got let go and how he has them playing. But, I mean, you can't get him back, obviously, which is quite unfortunate. But, to me, I would have more faith going forward if my organization just goes, we made a mistake and that we're going to try to fix this. And sometimes you just get it wrong. It's not great, and it makes me doubt the front office a little bit. And if I'm the owner, I'm looking at the front office going, y'all are on thin ice. Don't ruin this again. You got to make a correct decision here. You got to nail this hire. But I'm not going to fault them if they decide to move on from a mistake too fast.
And putting myself in the front office's shoes, if I'm the front office, definitely not coming out and saying we were wrong, because then that does put the hey, what did you do? What I would be doing is arguing that this year is unlike any other, and because of the injuries, because of the coronavirus, because of the no fans, because of all this, we didn't get a fair shake this year, and we should be given another year to run it back. If I'm the front office fighting for my job, that's going to be my angle I'm taking with this Bjorkgren stuff, and saying that he can get it done. We just need to adjust a few things. The players are upset, but it's because everyone's under extra stress, and let us prove it that we can do it during a normal year, which is hopefully next year. We'll see. And I think that's
everybody gets their vaccines.
Yeah. And so I'm hoping if I'm the front office, that's the argument I'm taking,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think they'll use that. I'm not expecting Indy to drastically shake up the front office this offseason. I think at the minimum, there's going to be some sort of change. Even if they don't fire Bjorkgren, again, I think the coaching staff is going to get radically shaken up. But I do think there's a high chance they fire Nate Bjorkgren. I don't think this whole, this just doesn't accidentally get out, especially as the Pacers are in a playoff race. Put it that way.
Yeah.
I know we're saying it's a disappointment, but, they're fighting for the play-in game. We've got a week left. If I'm Indy, I'm trying to make this push. You're still a game and a half behind Charlotte. You have time to get even into the 8th seed and play this game against the Miami or Boston, whoever that ends up being. I feel like you got to do that if you're Indy. The timing is definitely weird there, but you don't want to make it seem like it's a lost season before it's 100% lost.
Yeah, well, and the Pacers had a pretty decent win it was either last night or the night before over the Hawks, who were really working on a comeback. So, they're still getting wins. There was a conversation about how essentially their defense is the problem. They're like 16th in the league for defense, but then you talk about it. Miles Turner's been out for a little bit. Karis LeVert was out with his situation for a while. And so you wonder if them getting back into it, or when they get back into it, helps that defense, whether it's this year or next year. I wonder if that kind of helps the situation. And then at the end of the day, winning kind of silences all. So if they keep winning, next year, if they come out and they're winning, I feel like we won't be hearing that this is a problem if Bjorkgren's still there,
Yeah, I think they've fallen short of expectations the past couple of years, and that's what's been disappointing. Now, again, a lot of it has been due to injury. I think, Victor Oladipo obviously struggled with injuries while he was there as well. But it's definitely been disappointing, so we'll see if they make any changes. Not disappointing is Atlanta. Atlanta's still in the 5 seed right now. Like we said, Nate Bjorkgren has just been doing an incredible job there. Now, they do have Miami hot on their heels, only a half game back as of right now. Miami has the game in hand, so they could potentially be tied with Atlanta. But I mean, this is a team who weathered really the absence of Trae Young, has Trae Young back now. He's playing excellent. I mean, even if there are a 3 or a 6, I mean, we talk about at the beginning of the year and in the first really half of the season on the podcast, all that money, the hundreds of millions of dollars that they spent in the offseason trying to make the playoffs. I give them credit for, ramping up the expectations when necessary. And, they're going to be a fearsome team in the playoffs. Like, I'm not necessarily saying that they're going to win a series, because I think, depending if they drop to 6, I think it's going to be tough, whether you have Brooklyn, whether you have Milwaukee, whichever one of those two it ends up being, is I think they'll not win that series. Ideal situation, obviously, for them is they got to get 5. They get 5. I don't know that they're favorites against the Knicks, but they could beat the Knicks and it wouldn't surprise me.
Well, and to that, the Knicks are only a half game ahead of them, so even they could be the 4 and the Knicks could be the 5. But
they could get Miami, yeah.
To my prediction, and we can get into this later on because we're going to talk about the rest of the week. To my prediction, I had the Heat and Celtics being over the Knicks and Hawks because I thought the experience would get them there. I think the Heat still have a decent chance to do it. We'd have to look at potential tiebreakers and things like that. But at this point, it's probably pretty fair to say that the Celtics probably won't with 35. That's 2 games back, and depending on how that kind of sorts out, I don't think they will. But there's still a chance the Heat get themselves into that 4th spot, depending on how things shake out and how close things are. So I agree with you. I think best case scenario for the Hawks is you end up going up against the Knicks, and I talked about how I wanted that because it's 2 of the younger teams with the younger stars for that argument, get them going up against each other. And then it could become a pretty consistent rivalry that we see in the playoffs, going forward for a few years to come. And if they do even better, then a bunch of years to come. So I kind of like the idea of those 2 meeting up in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, it would, like you said, certainly the young talent element is there. Miami's cooking right now, and that's the thing, is I do think their experience is going to matter, and I wonder about them. Now, the vibes are good with the Knicks, and the Knicks have continued to win big games, so they've lost 2 going into this podcast. That's kind of where you wonder. I mean, the Knicks have the game in hand on Atlanta, put it that way, so they're half up on Atlanta, so they could be a full game there with 5 to go. I mean, really, it just comes down to the schedule. So I'm going to pull up the Knicks, Atlanta, and Miami schedules right now. But I do think, I mean, it's something that we said all year. It's like, I do think Miami is the best of these 3 teams. Like, they've just done this before. They went to the finals last year. Like, it sure feels
well, at
like
the end of the day,
now.
At the end of the day, it comes down to, like, who are you putting your trust in? Jimmy Butler for the Heat is probably going to get my trust out of those 3 teams.
Yeah, Jimmy's the best player. Like, Julius Randle's probably had the best regular season, but Jimmy's the best player. You've got Bam, again, Tyler Hero, all these other guys got this experience last year. Like, that really matters. Now, Miami has a massive game tomorrow against Boston on national television, so that's going to be a big one. I mean, Boston got shellacked by Chicago last night, and that's a concerningly bad loss. Every time it feels like Boston has just hit the switch, they run into something. And that's no pun to Jaylen Brown either, who, they ran into each other. He had to miss a couple of games.
Yeah, that was scary.
Yeah, glad he's okay. But that definitely was a concern there, no doubt about that. All right, so the Knicks last 5. are against the Clippers, the Lakers, both in LA, against the Spurs, against the Hornets, and against Boston. So that's a pretty tough schedule.
Yeah.
I mean, the 2 losses are against Denver and Phoenix, so, you kind of chalk it up to that. But this is a difficult road trip. Again, you hope you catch the Lakers at a good time with injuries, but they say LeBron is going to play next week, so we'll see what happens on that front. But even San Antonio is playing for play-in games, so that's not going to – I mean, the easiest game there is Charlotte, and Charlotte's fighting for playoff spots.
If I'm the Lakers, and we can look at the standings and all that stuff, but if I'm the Lakers, man, at this point, I am cutting my losses, resting LeBron until the playoffs, and then hoping to God when he comes in, he's good to go. You know what I mean? Like,
and just accept that you're playing play-in usually.
Yeah, because if you bring him back and he re-aggravates it, then he's hurt for this play-in anyway. It's like, dude. You might as well just make sure you're 100% loaded, ready to go for this play-in tournament, because at this point, it looks like you're probably going to get it. Like you're in the, I think it's 7th right now. Hold on, let me pull it up. You're in the 7th spot. You've got 3 over the Warriors. You're 2-8 in the last 10. I mean, I'm just, God forbid, you put LeBron back out there to try to make sure that you can, or try to get out of the play-in, right? If you do that, so here's the problem: the Trailblazers, who just beat the Lakers, now own the tiebreaker. So they're a game ahead. So you need to get 2 games just to get out of it. So if you bring LeBron James back trying to do that, which is a tall task with only 5 games left, and he re-aggravates his ankle or gets hurt again and can't play, well, then there goes the season.
Yeah, it's over.
Whereas, rest LeBron for 5 more games. Hopefully that's enough for his ankle, and then you're good to go, and then just buckle down and accept that you got to go through the play-in tournament.
Yeah, I mean, it's looking like, losing that tiebreaker is so huge. Now, again, Portland's been kind of up and down, too, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. Coming back east real quick. So, the Hawks have the easiest schedule by far of this last. So the Hawks have 4 left. They've got a pair with Washington, who, again, Washington's playing great. I'm not just going to call that a guaranteed win for Atlanta at this point. I think quite the opposite. But then their last 2 are against Orlando and Houston. You have got to win those games if you're Atlanta. And in the case of Orlando and Houston, they're probably not trying to win games at this point either. So
if they do win games, they're going to be pissed off about it. You don't want to be winning those games.
So Miami's just tough. Miami's got 2 with Boston, but so they can control their own destiny though on that front. But they're both in Boston. Then they've got Philly on Thursday. Then they've got Milwaukee, and then they've got Detroit. So they've got a cupcake at the end of the season with Detroit. But it's like all 4 of those games are going to be tough. Honestly, I think you're probably hoping the Sixers have 1 locked up, and at that point, or maybe even resting players. Now, that's going to depend on what happens tonight against Detroit, and then the Sixers have to beat Indy as well. But there's a possibility that I think that, that's a very winnable game though for Miami, put it that way. Again, the way Boston has played, they're going to have to earn it. But if Miami goes out and beats Boston twice, if you're able to win, I just see them though dropping one of these games where I think Atlanta has a pretty good shot to go at the minimum 3-1. You have to split the games with Washington. You can't, and then win the last 2 if you're Atlanta. You cannot. Best case scenario obviously is you win all 4. You win all 4, then you're controlling your own destiny, and you could very well be 4, because the Knicks schedule is tough too. Like, we mentioned those teams. The Knicks could very well lose that game to the Clippers. I actually think if nobody's playing, they could probably beat the Lakers. The Spurs are the wild card, and then I think they have to beat Charlotte and then have to beat Boston if they want to get 4. But Atlanta has the best path going forward. Again, they have a game less. The Knicks have this game in hand. So the Knicks can be a full game up on Atlanta. And the Heat have the opportunity to tie Atlanta as well. But if I'm looking at those last 4 games, again, Atlanta has the best chance to go 3-1, 4-0 over those games. And so I have to feel pretty good if I'm a Hawks fan that I can, at the minimum be 4 or 5, put it that way. And that's what I think you're looking for. Now, if I'm the Hawks, I'd rather play New York than play Miami. It's plain simple. Miami has the experience. New York doesn't. Now, do I think that New York is probably the favorites against Atlanta? Absolutely. But no disrespect, I think either of these teams are the favorites against Atlanta. So at that point, I'll take the inexperience over the team that just made the finals last year.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And just to echo what I was saying is I hope it's Knicks Hawks, but I could see it being even with that. I could see the Heat getting in there and it being Heat Knicks, and then Hawks being in that sixth spot, and
Boston is not totally out of this either. Like we said, if they beat Miami twice, they can jump right back into sixth real quick. Like they control their own destiny a little bit as well. So that's one of the big things to watch here over the last part of the season. We'll get into the rest of what we're going to be watching here in a second.
It is time for Who's Ballin' and Who's Falling on the Drive and Dish podcast.
So for balling for me this week, I've got Bojan Bogdanovic, 48 points last night against Denver as Utah clinched the Northwest Division. So congrats to Utah. Obviously, they're going to be hoping to clinch that number one seed in the West as well. But since Donovan Mitchell went down with that ankle injury 11 games ago, he's been averaging 24 points a game on 52, 44, and 91. He's 8 of 11 last night against Denver. He's really, we wondered where the offense would come from. Mentioned him having to step up big time when Donovan Mitchell went down, obviously the focal point of that offense. And, good for him. He's really helped to keep afloat. And I guess it kind of gets into my greater point is we always, and even I'm guilty of this sometimes too, is like we always kind of disrespect Utah. Like they don't have a very real chance to win this thing this year.
Yeah, and I think we'll continue to do that until they really make like a statement in the playoffs. And I'm not sure why we do that, but that's just how it is. I think it's going to be at least it feels the same way, almost for like the top 3-4 seeds a little bit. Like I feel like until the Jazz, Suns, Clippers, and Nuggets show us something in the playoffs, probably not going to believe it until it's actually happening, Yeah,
I think less with the Suns because the Suns have Chris Paul. And
True.
I think for better or for worse, he'll get the benefit of the doubt with that. I also think people remember, because again, they didn't make the playoffs, but like the Suns won 9 straight last year in the bubble. Like to basically be in position.
That's something. Yeah.
That should have mattered. I think in a weird way, they don't have that as much. Now, if the Suns totally flop on their face this year, that could change as soon as next season. Like, I think it wouldn't be that way for the Clippers, obviously, if it wasn't the way last year. Right. And I think if Utah won their first round series last year, if they had finished that series against Denver, I think the situation there might be a little different as well. But I think now they're kind of in that prove it boat. I also think they could change that real quick. Like anybody they get right off the rip. If Utah is number 1, number 2, you're talking about potentially playing the Lakers. You're playing Steph Curry in the first round. Like, you're not going to get somebody easy, even if you get Memphis. Like, I think Memphis has been good. They're still in the mix as well. No offense, San Antonio. I'm sorry, because San Antonio is playing really tough, but they're under 500. Like, I'm not as worried about them, I guess, as the others. I still think, obviously, they Lakers is tough if you're playing the Lakers at 7. I think they handle whoever they get at 8. For the record, even as great as Steph is, I don't think this Warriors team is going to win a playoff series this year.
No, and a few of those comments will eventually get me into my we were talking about the Spurs, and the Pelicans were close. They're 2 games back right now in the 11th, but that'll get us into my falling a little later down the line. But my ball-in is going out to Andrew Wiggins. And it's because a couple weeks ago, Stephen A. Smith came out and said that he wouldn't trade or give away Wiggins for a bag of cookies. Pretty much said there's just something about him that says he doesn't want it. Because, every year there has to be somebody that criticizes Andrew Wiggins and his game. And so this was it. Andrew Wiggins since then has averaged 23.4 points per game, 4.6 rebounds per game, a little over a block and a half per game, 50% field goal, 42% from 3, and 92% free throw percentage, which is pretty much, if you were to keep track that he's putting up 50, 40, and 90 stats.
Yeah, he's been wonderful. He's been a really solid second option, and that's what you can ask for the Warriors. The Warriors haters, I think, will always just come from the fact that he's never going to quite develop into that number 1 talent. I also think it's because of the contract. I think people will look at that and go, he's extremely overpaid. He's never been what he had the hype to be, put it that way. We remember all the winless for Wiggins hype going all the way back to 2014. But Andrew Wiggins is a total scrub either. And that's where it's like, Stephen A. Smith, come on. Like, yeah, and the contract is bad. And that's where I think it loses the value. But like, Andrew Wiggins has been really solid defensively this year. He's generally been guarding teams' best players night in and night out. Like we said, I don't want to give all the credit to that comment, but he's been on a generally great streak right now. Yeah. And again, with a Warriors team that is a little undermanned, not having James Wiseman, not having Kelly Oubre right now for dealing with that wrist injury. So the fact that they're staying afloat, I mean, he's been that bona fide second option on offense. And so I think you have to give him the credit there. I think, again, I think there will always be that narrative around Andrew Wiggins, but that doesn't mean that you just suddenly take him or suddenly could just come out and be like, oh, he's a bad NBA player. I think that's extremely unfair.
Where do you think, sorry, you just got me thinking about this. Where do you think Andrew Wiggins would go if you redrafted the 2014 draft? Because there are some names on here.
Let me look at it.
So here's how it went. Here's what it went. Wiggins was number 1. Jabari Parker went number 2, and I remember those. That was like the big 2. And then Joel Embiid was hurt. Embiid went 3. Aaron Gordon went number 4. Dante Exum went 5th. Marcus Smart went 6th. Julius Randle went 7th. And then you start getting a little more open. I mean, Nick Stauskas 8th. Elfrid Payton went 10th. Which, by the way, was picked by Philly. We should point that out.
Oh, he got traded. Right away for Dario. It was a fleecing. A Sam Hinkie fleece.
Yeah, because then you jump down to Orlando, who took Dario. Zach LaVine went 13th. TJ Warren went 14th. Nurkic went 16th.
The big one is Jokic. Jokic went 41 in this draft.
Yeah, he's not even on this first list. Yeah.
Denver drafted Nurkic and Jokic in this draft. I mean, remember when that was a decision at one point?
Yeah.
Obviously, Denver made the correct one there, and that was the big thing when they were moving on from Nurkic. I mean, this draft, if you were to redo it, it's essentially like, what do you want at 1? Like, who do you think is easier to build around?
It would have to be, it would have to be Jokic or Embiid. Honestly, I think if you take it back and with the injury concern with Embiid, you're probably going Jokic.
Oh, if there's the injury concern, then you know how it turns out, then it's no doubt Jokic.
Right.
I think you could pretty strongly argue Jokic now at number 1. Yeah. My homer a little bit may kick in and say I would take JoJo 1, but I think with Joel and with Jokic, they're the clear 1-2. After that, I probably would take Zach LaVine 3. And then I would probably go with, it's crazy because they wouldn't have been this way before this year. I probably would take Julius Randle 4. And then at that point, you start to go down. I mean, TJ Warren's in consideration.
Aaron Gordon. Did you say Aaron Gordon?
Aaron Gordon's in consideration. My top 5 would be either Jokic, Embiid 1-2, and then LaVine at 3, and then Randle at 4. Oh man, it gets hard after that. I'm probably Aaron Gordon at 5. I want to say.
Do you put barely? Honestly though, the spark, and maybe it's just because I feel like the Sixers have been burned by him so much from Marcus Smart. Like I feel like he's such a team guy.
I know, but I just don't think Marcus Smart can do as much as Aaron Gordon can naturally, and that's
fair. And we are seeing that a bit with the Nuggets. I mean, the Nuggets are holding on without, and he's only been there for a short period of time.
I'm pulling up the NBA draft because I want to see the career win shares and VORP and all the stuff like that as it's ranked.
Oh man!
Clint Capella was in this draft too. That's a good call. Clint Capella would go not at 5, but he would go probably higher there. Just looking at the advanced numbers real quick. Kyle Anderson, he's been another one that's been good in this draft. Dwight Powell was in this draft.
Yeah, dude. I mean, there's a lot of Gary Harris. I mean, there's a lot
Jeremy Grant too. Jeremy Grant low. Jeremy Grant's 39. Joe Harris is 33. TJ Warren 19. Nurkic. Jordan Clarkson was in this draft. He's a second round pick at 46. Like, this is a good draft. There's a lot of starters, rotation players in this mix.
Right.
I think as of right now, just knowing the way it's played out, I think I take Aaron Gordon 5. Again, LaVine and Randle are my 3-4. And then the 1-2 has got to be Jokic or Embiid. It's just pick whichever one you want. I'm going to say JoJo because I'm a homer. But I mean, if you go off the advanced numbers, Jokic has him smoked.
How crazy is that? I mean, Jokic has a 33.5 value above replacement, and Embiid's I thought was high at like 13.8.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, Jokic is really good offensively, man, and like
yeah. You
really
gotta
special offensively.
even
Jokic, you could also make the argument is easier to build around because he's so good offensively.
That's what I mean.
But Joel, you also can build an entire defense around. Like that's the thing is like look at how good this. I mean, the Sixers are a 1 seed built around Joel Embiid being the key element and the key force in every factor of that game. So I think that matters too.
I wanna homer up with you. I just think you got to go Jokic number 1.
No, I mean that's fair. I'm not even mad at that at all. I love Jokic a lot. I'm not one of these people who can't enjoy both of them. I think they're both super special.
Yeah.
It's they're leading the big man renaissance right now, essentially. All right, so I don't even. All right, what were we doing? We were falling right now.
We gotta do falling. Yeah.
Who was falling? So you had Wiggins as your fallen. Fallen for me, I had the Jimmy Butler and Karl Anthony Towns beef. And I don't even really want to say that this is fallen because I love it in a way. Like I love the general spiciness there, but they were caught on hot mic. The Heat beat the Timberwolves the other night, but Jimmy Butler is basically like, you soft as baby blank. You a loser. Already punked you once. Karl Anthony Towns is clapping back. Of course, the Timberwolves have beat the Heat twice this season, so I'm sure he's taking a little bit of satisfaction there. Of course, Timberwolves have 20 wins this season with Heat fighting for a playoff spot as well. Either way, though, this is not beef that's going to go away anytime soon.
I love it. I'm here for it. I mean, you saw we were talking about this off the show before we started with Edwards. You know, they were asking him about who got emotional out there, and he said the Zebras, talking about the refs saying that they weren't letting them, play and get physical and get into it. Which I think if Edwards is your rookie, if you're a fan of the Timberwolves, you love that he's not like shying away from the contact or the beef or the arguments. Like he said, like that's part of the game. We want to get into it. The refs aren't letting us do it and blah, blah, blah. So I think you'd like that out of your rookie. But yeah, I think it's fallen for sure because, getting into a situation like that, I mean, for, Jimmy Butler, if we're going to say it specifically, like that obviously was a game you couldn't lose because of how tight the situation is. So you can't risk getting kicked out of the game,
Yeah, I mean, it was late for what it was worth, so I think there was that too. But I mean, yeah, like you said, the refs are calling it tight. Anthony Edwards talking about that. D'Angelo Russell got tossed. So it was chippy to say the least. But yeah. That was coming towards the end of the game. So at least at that point, it was well locked up. But I in a way, I love it, but these two are definitely not going to be friends anytime soon. I don't think we're going to see a reunion, at least for a little bit. All right, who's falling for you this week?
Fallen for me is actually going to go out to a team that's upset about all the physicality and violence. Woj tweeting out that Zion Williamson fractured his left ring finger. He's going to be sidelined indefinitely, obviously. And then Dave Griffin comes out and says that he's injured because of the open season, as he put it, that there has been on Zion in the paint. He's been absolutely mauled in the paint on a regular basis. And there's to a point where other players have said to him, I'm going to keep doing this to you because they don't call it. He said there's more violence encouraged in the paint than any player I've ever seen since Shaq. It's egregious and horrific. Then when Shaq was doing it, and it's the same now, we need to protect our stars.
I mean, I respect David Griffin coming out and stepping up for his guy. Because I mean, obviously, you're devastated if you're New Orleans. I mean, give them credit; they gave the Sixers everything they could handle last night. But this essentially, I mean, they already would have needed some help to catch San Antonio. Granted, they kind of had it with how difficult San Antonio's schedule is. But this essentially ends any remote play-in chance there. So I think there's obviously the disappointment around that. Of course, I think it's protecting your guy because Zion is super special. He has been great, just dominant in the paint this year. I mean, the Shaq comparisons come up because he's scoring in the paint like Shaq. It's kind of like, him and Giannis are just these elite paint finishers. They just don't miss around the rim like that. And so I understand it. I mean, you want to try to, because I mean, you get the crap beaten out of you in the paint, and it probably is a situation where you get less called on you. And I think when you see, given the way with the landing zone, given the way with the follow through sometimes on jump shots and the way that those get called, And even for, if you're looking at a paint player, the way fouls get called for Joel Embiid, I think it's pretty fair to say that they don't get called like that yet for Zion. And so I think even if you don't change it this year, it is the bringing awareness to it so that he can start to take advantage of some of these calls. Because, he's getting walled in the paint. How else do you stop him? He's so big. Like, that's the thing, is he's always going to take that extra bit of oomph from everybody, because you're just going to have to kind of use your strength to try to slow him down a little bit.
Yeah, and I get it. If I'm Zion, then you got to decide how you want it to go. Are you bulking up even more, or are you, getting more elusive? Adjust to the way they're playing you a little bit too. Is how I feel like it should be approached as well. But yes, you can't let them absolutely murder someone down low. But at the same time, I don't want the game plan to be, hey, let's get it to Zion down low and just let him go to the line every time,
Yeah, no, absolutely. But you got to respect David Griffin. He's playing the game.
Yeah.
All right. So we have about a week left of the regular season, a little bit more than a week, by next Sunday, the 17th. So we were recording this on the 8th. By next Sunday, it's going to be over. The season will be completely over. We'll be getting ready to go into the playoffs. We'll be watching play-in games. And so, just a look ahead to next week, that'll essentially be our previews for that, for the play-in game, and for, we'll take a look at it, the seeding for all that, our first round predictions and such. But still a lot to be decided. It feels like, we talked about this last week, it feels like the 10 teams in both conferences are decided at this point, like who is going to make the playoffs and who's going to make the play-in games. Again, with Zion getting hurt, it kind of knocks the Pelicans out. I think that changes any potential shakeup at the bottom of the West with Memphis and San Antonio. Sacramento is still not technically eliminated either, but they would need a ton of help at this point. In the East, Chicago's 3 back, Toronto's 4 back at this point. It doesn't seem like they're going to catch Washington the way Washington is playing. If anything, I think we'd have Indy slip a little more. Charlotte's got LaMelo back a little bit, but I guess really with a week left, what are you looking forward to the most? For me, it's just all about the top of the conferences right now. Those are the races that I'm watching, less in the Eastern Conference. The East is essentially locked up. So the Sixers are up 3 on Milwaukee and Brooklyn. Milwaukee and Brooklyn will have to figure out what's going to happen with home court there. I think Milwaukee has a significantly easier schedule. The Bucks may not lose the rest of the year. And that's kind of, what the Sixers have a game against Miami. That's their hardest game by far. Of the ones they have left. They've got Detroit later tonight, but they're in a situation where if they win 3 of these last 5 games, it'll 100% be locked up. But if the Bucks or Nets lose any of these games, then they only really need to win 2. The Sixers have 2 with Orlando. They've got a game with Miami, and then they've got this game with Detroit. So, they're in a pretty prime position to lock it up. Now, Milwaukee does have the tiebreaker. That's the only reason I'm saying that I'm even mentioning this at this point, is that Milwaukee does have the tiebreaker if they're able to make up the ground somehow. Brooklyn does not. And so to that point, the Sixers basically, if the Sixers beat Detroit tonight, they're going to finish ahead of Brooklyn. At that point, it'd just be worried about Milwaukee. And then it's, like we talked a little bit earlier, the race for that 4, 5, 6, and even 7 matchup is going to be, take shape here over the next week to watch New York and Atlanta and Miami and Boston. Charlotte's going to be in the play-in game. Indy's going to be in the play-in game. Washington's going to be in the play-in game. I'm interested to see if Washington can get all the way up to 8 and avoid, basically give whoever's 7 a fit in the first round and kind of avoid that 9-10 game. The way they're chugging right now, they certainly have the opportunity to. And like you said, too, with Atlanta, they can really shake up the seeding a lot if they're able to win both those games. So I think those are the biggest things in the Eastern Conference, at least for me to watch.
Yeah, we talked heavily about the Knicks through Celtics, essentially, and where we think those will end up. But yeah, I kind of agree with you. I think, obviously, selfishly, we're excited to see where the Sixers land, and I hope it stays pace, and we are the number 1 seed getting out of the East. I think that's best case scenario. Obviously, matchup-wise, you definitely want that to be going, and so I like that for the Sixers. Yeah, in the East, I feel like it's less exciting than the West.
Yeah, the West is more seeding is to be decided in the West, but the West just has more teams that could get kind of trapped back into the play-in game. I mean, the West, the big competition in the West right now is for number one between Utah and Phoenix. And I think given the state of the play-in game and wherever the Lakers are going to be is going to be the thing to watch, because no one wants to play the Lakers in the first round. I mean,
right.
No one, especially after the season you've had. I mean, that's the rare scenario if everybody's healthy where you could potentially be an underdog as a 1 or a 2 seed, which is pretty crazy. I mean, the Clippers, I think, have to be thrilled. I mean, because the Clippers in Denver, their discussion has been, do you want 5 or do you want 6? If the Lakers jump back into 6, all of a sudden that 3 seed gets a whole lot less attractive. The Clippers are up 1 game on Denver right now. I do anticipate the Clippers finishing that and being at 3. Denver will be at 4. No one's going to catch that top 4. Dallas has clinched a playoff spot. They're at 5 right now. They've won 3 straight and done a good job of kind of getting themselves out of the play-in game situation. But I mean, that's really where it's worth watching. It's at 5, 6, and 7. It's with Dallas. It's with Portland. It's with the Lakers. Who can step up and avoid the play-in game? And are the Lakers going to actually drop this far? 8, 9, and 10 are locked up essentially with the Warriors and the Grizzlies and the Spurs. I don't really think any of them are going to get knocked out. Those 3 particular teams are going to be jockeying over seeding. Like, I think if you're Memphis, who's a half back of the Warriors right now, the Spurs are a game and a half back, you're obviously trying to get that 7 or 8 seed and avoid getting knocked out in the 9 or 10 game. So I think that Memphis versus Golden State particularly is worth watching. San Antonio, again, just gets brutalized by the schedule. Like, I think they're just going to end up having to play in this 9 and 10 game just because of how difficult it is, the hardest schedule in the entire league the rest of the way. But for Memphis and for Golden State, that's definitely worth watching. I'm going to pull up their schedules here real quick. But the other 3 as well, with Dallas and with Portland, with the Lakers, like, it's crazy that we're talking about it with the Lakers. And again, I'm not going to jump off I've been saying the whole year that if they're healthy, they're the favorites, but it's pretty jarring to see that they have to play in a play-in game.
Well, and you know my stance on it. I think they should just accept that they're going to be in the play-in game and kind of, rest as much as possible. Obviously, make sure you're in the playoffs in general for the play-in game. I don't think you'll fall that far out, but make sure you're in make sure you're healthy for the playoffs. I don't think you want to make this grand push to get out of the playoff or the play-in tournament and just to have only 50% of LeBron James, and then you get bounced in the first round or something like that. So I think there's a really good chance that the Lakers are in there, and I think they should accept it. I know, there's some games they're going to do their best to get out of it and or at least try, but that loss to the Trailblazers kind of felt like the one that's going to almost make it near impossible a little bit,
So Memphis has, going back to Memphis and Golden State real quick, Memphis has 6 left. They've got Toronto, they've got the Pelicans, they've got Dallas, they've got a pair with Sacramento, and they've got Golden State. So that Golden State game obviously could be massive at the last one of the season. But really, I mean, if they're able to beat Sacramento twice, if they're able to beat the Pelicans without Zion, if they're able to beat Toronto, who's not really in playoff position right now, I mean, Memphis can be in a really good position. Compare that to the Warriors, who they have 5 left. They have OKC, which should be a win. They have Utah, Phoenix, the Pelicans, and Memphis. So it's a little tougher for them. Obviously, with Utah and Phoenix jockeying for spots, they're not exactly going to take games off. That's a back-to-back, too. But, I mean, if you're able to beat OKC tonight, which I think I don't see why they wouldn't be able to do, you would still maintain that spot on 8. If you go 3-1 the rest of the way and you beat Memphis, I think they'll be able to probably lock into that spot. That it could very well come down to it. That last game of the season for who's going to be the 8 or who's going to be the 9, and potentially avoid that first game. So that's definitely worth watching. With Dallas and Portland with the Lakers, like I agree with you. I think that the sense that the Portland owns the tiebreaker is just so huge. Because like we said, now you got to make up a game, but really you have to make up 2. We're going to run out of time here fast. I mean, we're talking about 5 games, tops left. Looking at Portland's schedule, Portland has San Antonio, Houston, Utah, Phoenix, and Denver. So Portland's schedule is tough. That is the thing. Is like you're not going to get, other than Houston, you don't have a single cupcake game there. I think they have to beat San Antonio. Like they play San Antonio tonight, which is tough off a back-to-back game. But I think these San Antonio and Houston games, both in Portland, are essentially must-wins. And at that point, you got to feel pretty pretty good because the Lakers have Phoenix. That could very well be a loss. And they could do you some favors there. They've got New York, who's going to be fighting for playoff spots, but they've got Houston, Indy, and New Orleans. That's a significantly easier schedule for the Lakers. So I do think there is a scenario where the Lakers still can dig themselves out of this hole without really having to do too much, If LeBron comes back next week, if chalk the L to Phoenix essentially, but if you beat New York with LeBron next week, I don't even think you'd have to play him in the back-to-back against Houston to potentially win that game. If you can handle your business and take care of Indy and take care of New Orleans, I think there is a situation where if Portland stumbles, again, these last 3 games are really tough, or stumbles to San Antonio, you can make up that ground.
Yeah, no, you can. It's just, you're risking it with the injury or re-aggravating LeBron's ankle, and then next thing you know, you're going into the playoff shorthanded. And if your end game obviously is winning it all, that's the last spot you kind of want to be in,
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. Dallas has the easiest schedule the rest of the way. I think they'll be fine to avoid the play-in. They've got Cleveland, Memphis, New Orleans, Toronto, and Minnesota. They got to win it. To me, at the minimum, 3 of those games. They've got a cushion, though, as well. But I think there's definitely plenty of scenarios where they go 4-1 and, end up either at 5 or 6, which is where they need to be. I think Dallas probably ends at 5, though. They've got the easiest schedule of those 3 teams.
Yeah. No, I kind of agree. It's going to be a great week and a fun one to watch some basketball for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely time to lock in. It's multiple screen season. We are certainly excited about it. A whole lot of fun to have. And, it's unfortunately stay up late for us season. The East Coast, 10 p.m. starts. It's one of the few times I like generally being on East Coast time. But it is definitely one of the few times I'm envious of the West Coasters being able to start those East Coast games early and get regular time late games.
I had a buddy that moved out to Vegas, and the first thing he texted me is like, dude, it's amazing working. Like, you just have sports on the whole time. Like, while you're working, there's just sports going on. And I was like, honestly, that's amazing.
When I worked the overnight shift, when I worked like midnight to 9 a.m. type deal, when I was first breaking into news, like way back in the day when we were starting the podcast, it would be great in that regard because I would. I'd get to watch. I'd wake up at like 5. I'd watch all the East Coast games with no question. I'd usually get most of the West Coast games, or even if I was going into work, like I'd be able to catch the end of them there. So it's definitely advantageous at this time of year, no doubt about it. Thank you everybody for listening to this episode of the Driving Dish NBA podcast. We appreciate you guys. We'll be back next week with some first round predictions, some play-in predictions. So stay tuned for that. Find the podcast anywhere you have podcasts. On Apple, leave us a review on iTunes, good or bad, or read them on the podcast. Not an Apple user, Google Play Store, Amazon Music, Spreaker, TuneIn, Player FM, Stitcher. We are there.
And become our 8th follower on YouTube. Just search Drive and Dish NBA podcast on YouTube. We do video versions, and you can find them up there.
I think we've done enough dancing for today. So why don't we dance Wednesday?
See you, Starside.
Okay, well, I'm out of here.
Hey! Hey! Let's go while we're young.
All right. I think they get the point.